These guidelines and recommendations were first drafted back in 2023, and we launched a draft during Human Rights Day in December 2023. They were drafted with the assistance of a retired Court of Appeal judge, and also with the assistance of the United Nations Development Programme. Over the course of 2024, we called for feedback and comments on the draft, and based on some of that feedback, we also incorporated those comments and developed the draft to the point where we were ready to launch the draft. Our internal staff in the Inquiries and Investigation Division worked very hard to finalize these drafts. So then we also met with the acting IGP to have an internal discussion on areas that we saw as challenges, and this issue came up during that discussion, and there was a very positive development where the acting IGP agreed to circulate these guidelines amongst his officers once we finalized them. And that's why we endeavored to finalize this draft last week and then forwarded it to the acting IGP. And he very quickly has sent it to all the provincial DIGs, requesting them to raise awareness amongst their officers and also take steps to implement these guidelines and recommendations. So I think this is a very important step in the right direction towards dealing with the problem of custodial deaths and encounter deaths. I'd like to just add another point here, and Mr. Punchiheva also raised this point. It's a very important point. These guidelines and recommendations are directed towards Sri Lanka Police, right? So this is directed towards a particular institution. But this is a problem that we as an entire society has to also take some kind of responsibility towards, because the issue of custodial deaths and encounter deaths is not merely a reflection of Sri Lanka Police, it's also a reflection of our society. And we have also separately advised the government on a number of occasions that we need to also think very seriously about an independent mechanism to look at certain types of human rights violations in an independent manner. Because as Mr. Punchiheva very rightly pointed out, currently on a number of issues, including custodial deaths, torture, enforced disappearance, the institution or the officers that investigate the crime is the very institution whose officers are accused of the crime. So we have a conflict of interest problem, and we have been commenting on this issue for a while, and the position of the Human Rights Commission is that there needs to be an independent institution with adequate powers and resources to conduct independent investigations and then provide a file to the prosecuting authorities. Now, this is done in many other countries, so it's not a new thing that we are proposing. And when it comes to corruption and bribery charges, we have such an independent institution in Siabok. So this is not a very novel idea. It's just that when it comes to gross human rights violations like the ones I mentioned, we are still dependent on the same institution to carry out the investigation of their own officers. While that could happen because of independent officers within that institution, as a system, it is not a particularly good idea. And that is why we have problems like under the Torture Act, which was passed in 1994, we haven't seen many convictions, very, very few convictions in 30 years. And this is despite the fact that the Supreme Court has found so many officers responsible for torture. So what is the problem? If the Supreme Court is finding that there has been torture in these cases, in fundamental rights applications, why is that not translating into convictions under the Torture Act in the High Court? And the simple reason is there is a conflict of interest within the system. So if we're moving towards system change, these guidelines and recommendations is one step towards system change. Apart from these guidelines and recommendations, we also recommend and advise that a mechanism is created to ensure that the investigation and prosecution of these offences are conducted by independent body. So we have taken a small step in the right direction also by recommending that a special committee be appointed to advise the current investigating officers when it comes to custodial death. But that is not the only solution here, and that is not a sufficient solution. I think we have to be more ambitious and require more far-reaching mechanism with resources and adequate powers to actually conduct these investigations in the future. And that will require some level of law reform. So with those words, I'll pause, and I think we can open up for question and answer, unless Professor Thanaraj, would you like to also?
Yes, please.